Hello friends, welcome back to another session of JMS. In this session, we are going to discuss about the messaging flow control, or we also call it a throttling in Weblogic server when we configure the JMS. Okay, and this video is specifically on demand by Suresh Jyoti Prakash. Okay, and the throttling that we are going to discuss about is that if you have some basic understanding of JMS, okay, then we know that one application send messages to another application, right? And at certain point of time, it is possible that your the application which is on the receiver side may not able to consume the messages from the source or from the producers due to certain reasons, okay. And in that case, how we can allow the throttling of the messages from the producer side so that your consumer or the destination can able to process the JMS request or the messages. So why messages flow control is required, or that means why throttling is required. Okay, so suppose that we have a sender application which we also called as a source, or we can say as a producer because it is producing the messages or sending the messages to your destination application. So destination application can also called as a consumer, right? Because it is consuming the message or receiving the message. So we can say that is a receiving application or consumer or destination as well. In between, you have a JMS service provider, which is called a WebLogic server, right? Because in the JMS subsystem and the system we can define in the WebLogic server. So we call it as a JMS service provider because it is providing the JMS services. So sender one application is sending messages to receiving application to destination or to consumer with the help of JMS service provider, which is a JMS, right? And in between, where exactly it is storing the message, is storing the messages in your JMS services servers, okay? And apart from that, queue and topic. So JMS server is a physical repository of your the messages that you are receiving in the JMS service provider. Okay, and the messages we get either in the queue or either in the topic. Okay, and it gets physically stored at your JMS server. So when we talk about the throttling, so it can be at the JMS server level or it can be at the queue or topic and level. So suppose that your application, the sender application, which is we are also calling producer, it is expected to send 1,000 messages per minute to your source application. Okay, that means it is designed that your source application or your receiving application has been designed in a way that it can consume the 1,000 messages per second. Okay, and your sender is sending the 1,000 messages per second and via JMS service provider. Okay, it is consumed by the destination or the consumer. Okay, in parallel. Okay, now suppose that your destination is down for 10 minutes for any reason. So it can be due to some maintenance, it can be due to it is crashed, may not be performing due to some networking or some database kind of a problems. Okay, but in all you can say that your destination is down for 10 minutes. Okay, so what will happen in that case? If your destination is down, it will not able to consume the messages from just coming from your sender application, right? So what will happen in that case? The messages will pile up in your source application because it is not getting consumed by your destination. So if it is down for 10 minutes, that means your destination is down for 10 minutes, okay, then in 10 minutes it is the almost 10,000 messages will be piled up because it was expected to send 10,000 1,000 per minute, okay, and your destination is down for 10 minutes. That means 10,000 messages are get piled up at your source application, and your message when your consumer is up after 10 minutes, okay, it will try to send all messages together. That means it will try to send 10,000 messages together because your destination was down for 10 minutes and your destination is or your consumer is expected to consume all the 10,000 messages. However, it was designed in a way, it was the capacity was designed in a way that it can consume maximum 1,000 messages at a time. It could be 1,200 messages, 1,400 messages, or could be 1,500, or maybe up to 2,000. It can consume maybe up to 2,000 messages if the buffer was considered when the capacity planning was done. But it is not expected to consume 10,000 messages at that time, right? So what will happen in that case? You will see a problem from the consumer side. You will see the slowness, or maybe your server, your consumer will get hang. You will see a lot of stuck threads in your application. Your server, managed server, on which you have targeted your JMS servers, and then queue and topics will get failed. Maybe your server will get in frequently will go in the warning state because it will not able to cater all the requests, 10,000 requests that it is getting at the same time. So in such situation, you have to ask to your producer, okay, to send the messages in chunks. So instead of sending the 10,000 messages together, okay, you can allow a throttling, and where your consumer can ask to producer, okay, instead of because I was down for 10 minutes, so instead of sending 10,000 messages all together, you can send messages in chunks, like a batch of 500 messages, or maybe a batch of 1,000 messages. Okay, so this is called a message throttling. Okay. Now, controlling the flow of messages on JMS server and destination. So how we can control that one? So with the flow control feature, you can direct a JMS server or destination to slow down message producers when it determines that it is becoming overloaded. Okay. So as I said, if your destination or your consumer is not capable to handle such kind of a load altogether, okay, then you can allow a flow control in your producer. Okay. And you can ask your producer that I'm not able to cater all the demand that you are sending as of now. Okay, and you have to send the messages in the batches. Okay, so now we'll see how flow control works, and then how we can configure flow control, and then the flow control threshold. Okay, so specifically when either a JMS server or its destination exceed a specified byte or message threshold, it become armed and instruct producer to limit their messages per second. Okay, so why we are talking about here is JMS server or its destination mean we store the messages. We know that we store the messages, we get the messages in queue and topics. Okay, and the queue and topics are targeted to JMS server, which is the physical repository of your JMS server. Okay, but there could be a possibility that you have a multiple queues and multiple topics. Some of the queues and topics related to one application, some of the queues and topics related to another application, or maybe to some different clients. Okay, and they all are together targeted to a JMS server. So there is a specific limit of your JMS server, and there is a specific limit of each every queue and topics, because as I said, there could be multiple queues targeted to a particular JMS server. Some of the queues are for application A, some of the queues are for application B, right? And so you have to define a limit for your JMS server, which is, you can say, the complete sizing of your queues and topics, and then you have a specific limit for your queues and topics, because your different applications may have a different kind of requirements. Application A is sending to Q1, and from there they need a message size of 10 MB or 20 MB. And when we talk about the Q2, which is receiving the messages from application 2, okay, they would need a message of size hardly of 2 MB, not more than that one. So there would be a different limitations of queues and topics of in terms of sizing, and then all are getting targeted to JMS server. So there is a limit of your JMS server as well. Okay, so when we're talking about the limit for JMS server or destination, that means we are we are going to configure all this threshold and messages threshold and the byte. That means it is called a size of your JMS. Okay, for each and every JMS server and for each and every queue and topic. That means when you are creating a JMS server, when you are creating different queues and topic inside that one, and you wanted to enable the flow control, that means that then you have to apply this threshold for each and every JMS server. And apart from that one, you have to apply this for each and every queue and for each and every topic. Okay, so what we can apply in that case, the threshold could be a byte. That means the total size of that particular queue or topic, or the total size of the JMS servers. Okay, or the messages threshold, the total number of messages that can be stored in a queue or in a particular topic, or maybe the total number of messages that can be stored in a JMS server. So based on that, we can define the different throttling, right? So this is the architecture that we have discussed in the previous slide, that you have a source or called a producer, then you have a destination, you call it a consumer, and your source is sending messages to your consumer with the help of JMS service provider, where the messages are getting stored in your JMS server from the queue and topic, and then it is getting delivered to your consumer, right? So suppose that, as I said, that we are going to define a threshold. Okay, so suppose that there is a byte threshold of 240325567. Okay, this is in bytes, right? So if I'm going to convert this in MB, then it would be 240325 MB. And if you are going to convert this in your, sorry, if you are going to convert in your kilobyte, because this is a byte, then it is a 240325 byte kilobyte. And if you are going to convert it is an MB, then it is a 240 MB. That means this is the size. If I'm talking about this is the size of my JMS server, then this is the total. This is the total byte that my JMS server can hold. Okay, or if it is a queue, then this is the total size that my queue can hold of the all the messages that is coming to that particular queue, or maybe for a topic. Similarly, if I'm saying message threshold is 1000, that this is the total number of messages that can be held by a JMS server or by a destination. So by destination means either queue or a topic. So this is the limit of my total messages that can be held by a JMS server or by a queue or a topic. Okay, and obviously for the limit for JMS server would be high, and the queue for queue it could be less, right? Because all the queues are, as I said, all the queues or topics are get targeted to JMS server, and there could be different queues for different applications. Those are getting targeted to JMS server. So in such situation, the total message threshold for your JMS server would be high, okay, and for particular queue it could be less, okay. So, but at the end, you can say that when we are going to define the message throttling, okay, it can be based on the byte threshold or it can be based on the message threshold. That means the total size of the messages that can be stored in my JMS server or queue or topic, or the total number of messages that can be stored in my JMS server or queue or topic. In that case, if my byte threshold is 240 MB and the message threshold is 1000, of if any time, okay, it get increased. That means if your inflow get increased, your message threshold is, the messages that you're getting in a particular JMS server or queue or topic is getting more than 1000, or the size of the byte is getting increased from 240 to 241. That means your inflow is getting increased beyond the threshold, right? In that case, your destination will be armed. Okay, that means the consumer will be armed. Okay, and what is the meaning of that? Once it is armed, now this is a very important term that is called unarmed and unarmed. Okay, so when your threshold is getting breached, in that case, your destination will be armed, and it will ask producer to enable the flow control. Okay, so when it will enable the flow control, that means your source application will have two settings, that is called flow maximum and flow minimum. Okay, so then in that case, your source will start sending the messages to your destination based on the flow maximum and flow minimum capacity. Okay, once it is enable the flow control based on the messages that it got from the consumer, which is armed. That means your destination or your consumer, once it is armed, it is sending a message to producer to please enable the flow control. Okay, I'm not able to handle such kind of a messages or the request, or it is getting the threshold is getting breached. In that case, your producer application will enable your flow control, and after enabling a flow control, it will send the messages to your destination based on the flow maximum and flow minimum capacity. Okay, so producers will limit their production rate based on a set of flow control attributes configured for producers via the JMS connection factory. So connection factory is highlighted because the flow control is enabled at the connection factory level, because the connection factory is the initial object that we configured when we configured a JMS server for creating a connection. So once the session is established, okay, and the connection is established with the your destination between the source and destination with the help of connection factory. Okay, so the connection factory that we have created in at the producer end, for that particular connection factory, this flow control will be enabled. So that we will see in the later screen how we can configure from the console with the help of connection factory. Okay, but the main point here is that your flow control will be enabled at the producer end from the connection factory, and for that you will have a two settings, flow maximum and flow minimum. Okay, so what is flow maximum is that there is a higher limit of the messages that can be sent when your consumer is armed. That means when your consumer is armed, it has sent a message to a producer that I'm not able to cater the demand that you are sending as of now. Okay, so you have to enable the flow control. So it will send first, it will try to send the flow maximum. So maybe the limit for flow maximum defined as 500 messages. Okay, and before it was the consumer was armed, it was sending 10,000 messages. And once it is armed, that means when the flow control is enabled, then it will send the 500 messages. Right? Why 500? Because the flow maximum is 500 messages. Okay, and maybe possible that when it is sending the 500 messages, your destination is still not able to consume that kind of messages because it was already overloaded. So your threshold will again get breached, and your destination will be in the armed condition. So till your destination is in armed condition, it will try to reduce the flow till the flow minimum. Okay, that means the flow maximum is you can say the flow maximum is enabled immediately when your destination consumer is get armed. Okay, at that time it will try to send the messages which is defined in the flow maximum, and still after sending the number of messages which is defined in the flow maximum, for example 500, your destination is still armed. Okay, then it will try to reduce the messages from maximum till the minimum setting. So for example, if your flow maximum is 500 messages, then it has sent the 500 messages, your destination or consumer is still armed. Okay, and your flow minimum is 100. Okay, then it will try to send the messages from 500 to 400, or maybe to 300, then again 350, then again 200, then again 150. Okay, that means between your flow maximum to flow minimum. So my flow maximum was 500 and flow minimum was 100. So till your destination is armed, it will try to send the messages between 500 to 100. Okay, and it will this get auto tuned based on the condition of your destination. If it is sending 500 messages and it is seeing that still destination is armed, it will try to send 400 messages, then it will try to send 300 messages. Okay, so this is the way how you can enable the flow control at the producer's level in the connection factory, and how this flow maximum and flow minimum capacity works. So as producers slow themselves down, the threshold condition gradually corrects itself until the server destination is unarmed. So as I said that my initial, my maximum capacity was defined as 500 for the flow control, and the minimum was defined as 100. Okay, so it will start with the 500, and it is seeing that, okay, the consumer is still armed, then it will try to send the 400 messages, then still the consumer is armed, it will try to send 300 messages, again, then it may try the 200 messages, and if it is unarmed, that means if it is sending 200 messages and it see that, okay, now the consumer is unarmed, then it may increase the flow control to from 200 to 250 or again to 300. Okay, and if still it see that the consumer is still going to be in armed condition, then it will automatically reduce the number of messages it is sending. So at this point, a producer is allowed to increase its production rate, but not necessarily to maximum possible rate. Okay, so this is my source application, destination application. In between, I have JMS service provider. My messages are getting saved in JMS server queue and topics, right? For suppose that I have a flow maximum defined as 100 and flow minimum defined as 20, right? And suppose my destination is get armed, okay? And it send a message to my source application that please enable the flow control, okay? In that case, your producer or your source application will maybe send 100 messages. After that, it may send 70, then 40, then 60, then 50, then 40, and so on. So it will be get auto-tuned, which is based on your destination condition. If your destination is still in the armed condition, it will try to reduce the messages. And if your destination is unarmed, that means it is able to consume the messages, then your producer application flow control will try to increase the messages gradually. Okay, and this is how this flow control works in JMS server. Okay, and as I said, your JMS flow count is completely depend on the condition of your destination, which could be armed or it could be disarmed, or you can say unarmed. Okay, so these are the different important attributes when we talk about the flow control that we configured in the producer side in the connection factory. Okay, once you will go to the connection factory, then you will see the different options. The first one is the flow control enable. That means if you wanted to enable the flow control, then you have to click on this checkbox, which is the default option, which is already enabled by default. So flow maximum and flow minimum we have already discussed, and flow interval is a time interval between your flow maximum and flow minimum. That means if your flow maximum is 500 and your consumer is still able to consume that messages, then after the interval that you have defined with the help of flow interval, it will again check for the status of your consumer, if it is still in the armed condition or not. Okay, so this is the interval that is, we can say, between the flow maximum and flow minimum messages flow. Okay, now when we talk about the threshold, so we have two main kind of a threshold: byte and message threshold high, and then byte message threshold low. That means the total number of bytes a particular JMS server or queue topic can hold, the total number of messages a particular JMS server or particular queue topic can hold, right? And that is, there you have two conditions: one is high and second is low. So we will see in the next session what does it mean the high and what does it mean of low. Okay, so what all the configurations that we are going to be configure for this kind of a flow control is, for JMS server we are configuring threshold and quotas. Similarly, for JMS queue we are configuring threshold and quotas, and then JMS topic we can configuring threshold and quotas, right? Now when we talk about the JMS server, okay, so we will go with the JMS server and the for queue, and the topic would also be same as of queue. Okay, so for JMS server, the the one important parameter is messages maximum. Sorry. So that means this is the maximum number of messages all that can be stored in JMS server. As I said, the queues and topics get targeted to your JMS server, and JMS server is the physical repository of your all the messages, right? So that means the total capacity of your JMS server. That means the total number of messages a JMS server can hold. It is defined by the messages maximum. Maximum message size. That means the size of each messages for a particular JMS server. So basically, the messages which is coming from the producer, for that there is a specific size is defined. Okay, and this is the maximum size which we can define for a message that can be stored in your JMS server. Bytes maximum is again the total, you can say, is the size of your JMS server, or the total number of bytes a JMS server can store. Okay, if you are going to with the -1 setting for this particular messages maximum or bytes maximum, that means it is unlimited. Okay, apart from that, you have a byte threshold high and byte threshold low. So as I said, in a flow control, you have a two kind of a setting: minimum, maximum, and minimum flow control, right? So when we talk about the byte threshold high, okay, when this condition reached for a particular message or, yeah, or for the total bytes, okay, in that case the flow control will get enabled, okay, and the JMS server became armed and instruct producer to begin decreasing their message flow. So whatever we have discussed so far, this is controlled by this particular parameter, which is called byte threshold high. So if any time that byte threshold get increased or beyond the threshold, right, in that case your destination application is going to ask to your source application that, okay, I am please enable the flow control because I'm not able to consume the messages that you're sending as of now. Okay, and then based on the message flow setting, which is the maximum message flow or minimum message flow, your producer will start sending messages to your destination application. And by threshold low, so now there would be a situation when your consumer would feel better, and then it may start processing the request more than what is coming from the producer, right? In that case it will unarmed. Okay, so when it is unarmed, then it will send a message again the to producer that is unarmed. You maybe increase the flow of control. So at that time, based on the condition of messages maximum flow or messages low, okay, your producer may would be sending 200 messages. So in that case, once your destination is unarmed, then your producer may send 300, 400, or 500 messages if the byte threshold low reached. Okay, and this is a screen where you can where you can configure your threshold for JMS servers. Okay, for that you can go to your console and then click on your messaging JMS servers, and inside your JMS server, click on your JMS server, then configuration, threshold, and quotas tab. Okay, inside that you can define the settings whatever we have discussed so far. So here you can see the -1 that is, it is completely unlimited. Okay, there is no limit defined here as of now, but which is not good for your production environments. So and apart from that, there is a blocking send policy, which is F, first in first out, and primitive. So if it is first in first out, then it will be whatever the messages is coming to your queue, it will be get processed by your JMS server or by your application, or it may be consumed by application. Okay, but when we define it as a primitive, so it will send the messages which is of shorter size to the first for the processing, and the messages of the bigger size will be processed later. And in same way that you can define these settings for your queue as well. So the previous slide we have discussed about the limitations of not limitations, the limit of your JMS server, and this is the limit of or a threshold that we can configure for JMS queue. So maximum message size, that means the maximum size of a message that can be stored in this particular queue. For example, if the limit is 2 MB, that means it is suppose that this queue will consume a message which would be of maximum of size 2 MB. Okay, and then if you're getting any message beyond that one, that you will say a error in your log files. Okay, that the message is beyond the limit of the particular queue. Okay, and apart from that, you have message threshold high and message threshold low. So this is the same condition. If your message threshold high condition reached, okay, reached, in that case your flow control will be enabled and your destination will become armed. Okay, and it will instruct your producer to please decrease the message flow. And similarly, if it is a message threshold low, that means your destination again unarmed, then your it will send a message to your producer that I am unarmed, I am able to process the messages, please get increase the count of messages. In that case, your source application will send the more request based on the message flow maximum and message flow minimum count. And this is all how this flow and flow controlling work between your producers and then your consumers. Okay, and this is how you can configure the setting for your particular queue or topic. Click on the services messaging, and then in the previous slide we saw that when we configure the threshold for JMS server, we clicked on the JMS server and the name of that particular JMS server and the tab. Now because we are configuring it for particular queue, right, so you have to click on your JMS module. Inside your JMS module you have a lot of different queues, connection factories, topics would be there. So to configure it for a particular queue, just click on that queue and then click on your configuration threshold tab, and then you can define all these settings here. If you have multiple queues, then you have to configure the setting for each and every queue and for each and every topic, right? So now when we talk about the producer, where we were saying that the producer is enable the flow control, and then based on the flow maximum and flow minimum capacity, it starts sending messages to your destination in a controlled way, right? So this is a screenshot of for your producer, or you can say source application, where you have a connection factory. Okay, so for that one, you again go to your services messaging and click on JMS module. Inside JMS module, click on the name of that particular connection factory. Okay, in my case, it is connection factory -0, which you can see on the screen. Once you will click on connection factory, click on configurations, and then flow control tab. Inside that, you can define flow maximum, flow minimum, and then flow interval, and then you have to enable the flow control enable tab. Okay, thanks for watching this video, and this is all about the JMS flow control, and stay tuned for a few more interesting videos.